Good morning friends, I am Captain Dr. D.K. Ramawat, working as a consultant cardiologist at Ramawat Heart and General Medicine Hospital, Bardmer, Rajasthan, India. Today we are taking very important CME, the game changer in CKD, the game changer in chronic kidney diseases, and we are taking newer approach, newer therapeutics in the treatment of CKD. Let us start. Chronic kidney diseases. Definition of the CKD: the kidney disease improving global outcome definition for CKD is not new. CKD is defined as abnormalities of the kidney structure or function present for more than 3 months with implications for health and requires one of the two criteria: documented or inferred for more than 3 months, either GFR less than 60 ml or markers of the kidney damage including albuminuria, urine sediments and electrolytes and other abnormalities. Now the chronic kidney disease means that your kidney are damaged and can't filter blood as they should. This damage can cause waste to build up in our body. It can also cause other problems that can harm your health. Diabetes and high blood pressure are the most common causes of CKD. Now regarding introduction, CKD is frequent. It increases with age and affects 1% out of the 10 in general population, and only 4 per 1 lakh will reach end stage renal disease. As soon as it occurs, CKD is associated with increased cardiovascular comorbid conditions. Chronic kidney disease has been recognized as a leading public health problem worldwide. The global estimated prevalence of CKD is 13.4%, and patients with end-stage kidney disease needing renal replacement therapy is estimated between 4.9 and 7.0 million. Now we go to the epidemiology. Here mortality rates vary depending on the kidney failure treatment. After 1 year of the treatment, those on dialysis have a 15 to 20% mortality rate with a 5-year survival rate of under 50%. Persons who receive transplants have a survival rate of about 80% after 5 years. Life expectancy on dialysis can vary depending on your other medical conditions and how well you follow your treatment plan. Average life expectancy on dialysis is 5 to 10 years. However, many patients have lived well on dialysis for 20 or even 30 years. The chronic disease is a slow and progressive loss of kidney function over a period of several years. Eventually, a person will develop permanent kidney failure. Chronic kidney disease, also known as chronic renal failure or chronic renal disease or chronic kidney failure, is much more widespread than people realize. It often goes undetected and undiagnosed until the disease is well advanced. Treatment is aimed at stopping or slowing down the progression of the disease. This is usually done by controlling its underlying causes. Now, the first facts on chronic kidney diseases. Here are some key points about chronic kidney disease. More detailed and supporting information is laid down in the main article. The number 1 first fact is common symptoms include blood in urine, high blood pressure and fatigue. Second fact, these causes include diabetes and specific kidney diseases which include polycystic kidney disease. Third fact, there is no cure for chronic kidney disease, which means treatment is focused on reducing symptoms. Fourth and the last fact, diagnosis commonly occurs after blood test, kidney scan and biopsy. Now we will go to the symptoms of the chronic kidney disease. Symptoms. Screening is recommended for those who are at risk. Signs and symptoms are noticeable, by which time most of the damage is irreversible. Early detection can significantly help prevent serious kidney damage. The most common signs and symptoms of chronic disease include anemia, blood in urine, high colored urine, decreased mental alertness, decreased urine output, edema means swollen feet, swollen hands and swollen ankles, and also swelling of the face if edema is severe. Then the fatigue, hypertension, insomnia, itchy skin can become persistent, then loss of appetite and male inability to maintain an erection, erectile dysfunction, more frequent urination, especially at night, then the muscle cramps, muscle twitches, nausea, pain on the side or mid to lower back, panting, shortness of the breath, protein in urine, sudden change in body weight, then unexplained headache. Now we go to causes of the CKD. Excess waste and fluid material are removed from your blood and excreted from your body, and progressive kidney damage is the result of a chronic disease. So first cause is diabetes. Kidney disease more commonly occur in 15 to 25 years after diagnosis of diabetes. Then the second cause, hypertension. Here the glomeruli are damaged. Then third, obstructed urine flow, which can back up into kidney from the bladder, called vesicoureteral reflux. This is caused by an enlarged prostate, kidney stone or a tumor. Then fourth cause, kidney diseases, polycystic kidney disease, pyelonephritis and glomerulonephritis. Then fifth, renal artery stenosis is a cause. Renal artery narrows or is blocked before it enters the kidney. Then certain toxins like fuels, solvents such as carbon tetrachloride, lead and lead-based paint, pipes and soldering material. Some types of jewelry have toxins which can lead to a chronic kidney failure. Then the seventh cause, fetal developmental problem. If kidney do not develop properly in the unborn baby while it is developing in the womb. The eighth cause, systemic lupus erythematosus. It is an autoimmune disease. Immune system attacks the kidney as though they were the foreign tissue. The ninth cause, malaria and yellow fever, cause impaired kidney function. Then 10th cause, some medications, overuse of NSAID, aspirin and ibuprofen. Then illegal substance abuse like heroin and cocaine. Then injury to kidney, a sharp blow or physical blunt injury to the kidney. Now we will go to the risk factors for CKD. The following conditions or situations are linked to a high risk of developing kidney disease. For example, a family history of kidney disease. Second, age. Chronic disease is much more common among people over 60 years. Then third, atherosclerosis. Fourth, bladder obstruction. Fifth, chronic glomerulonephritis. Sixth, congenital kidney diseases. Then seventh, very important, diabetes, one of the most common risk factor. Then the very most common is the eighth, hypertension. Then ninth is lupus erythematosus. Then 10th, overexposure to some toxins. And then 11th, sickle cell disease. And 12th, some medications. Now we are going to deal pathophysiology for the development of CKD in diabetes and hypertension. Supposing patient is having diabetes, there will be increased renal blood flow and there will be glomerular hyperfiltration. And if he is having hypertension, there will be sodium retention and volume overload. This will cause both increased tubular reabsorption, means this solute moves and water out of filters and back into your bloodstream. Solutes and water moves out of filter and back into your bloodstream, which causes increased oxygen consumption, and increased oxygen consumption causes tissue hypoxia, and tissue hypoxia will cause CKD. And remember, in case of renal artery stenosis, there will be decreased nitric oxide and it will decrease the release of the decreased oxygen, and there is also increased renin-angiotensin system activation. Then also there is actually insufficient HIF activation. HIF, hypoxia-induced factor. There is insufficient hypoxia-induced factor activation, which will cause decreased AMPK. AMPK means what? Here, activated protein kinase. So if there is decreased activated protein kinase, then it will cause rapid induction of autophagy, that is death of the cell, and this all will cause tissue hypoxia and CKD. And also you must know that hypertension causes tubulointerstitial injury, and this injury will cause microvascular rarefaction, and this will cause glomulosclerosis and this will cause extinction of small blood vessels encountered in hypertension, and these all will cause tissue hypoxia and CKD. Now we have come to the complications of the CKD. Very important. Listen it carefully. Kidney functions are what? Number one, sodium balance, then potassium excretion, then acid excretion, then calcium and phosphate balance, then erythropoiesis. Supposing there is sodium balance is disturbed, means there is sodium retention and volume overload is there in CKD. So what to do? Sodium restriction will be done and diuretics are given. And if in CKD there is hyperkalemia, then you have to do dietary restriction of the potassium rich foods and avoid NCAs. If in CKD there is metabolic acidosis, then soda bicarb is given IV, or there are tablets also 500 mg TDS given. If there is in CKD increased phosphate level or increased parathyroid hormone, or if there is decreased serum calcium or decreased calcitriol, what to do? If there is increased phosphates, then we must give phosphate binders. What are the phosphate binders? Number one, cevilamar hydrochloride. Second, sucroferric oxyhydroxide, and third is calcium carbonate. These all three are given to reduce the this increased phosphates. And if there is increased this parathyroid hormone, then what to do? You have to add calcimimetics. What are the calcimimetics? These are number one, cinecalcet and etylcalcetide, and this will cause decrease in parathyroid hormone release from the parathyroid cells, and then it will cause what? Decrease plasma parathyroid hormone up to 80%. If there is anemia in CKD, then what to do? Erythropoiesis stimulating factors are given and iron supplement is given. What are the erythropoietic stimulating agents? Number one, apoitin alpha, and second, apoitin beta. Now we are supposed to know the stages of the CKD. So here, stage 1 is normal kidney or high GFR, means GFR more than 90 ml per minute. But in second stage, means mild CKD, GFR is 60 to 89 ml. Then stage 3A, moderate CKD, GFR is 45 to 59 ml. Then stage 3B, moderate CKD, here GFR is 30 to 44 ml per minute. Then stage 4, severe CKD, GFR is 15 to 29 ml per minute. Then stage 5, this is end stage of CKD, here GFR will be less than 50 ml per minute. Now what are the routine essential treatment in these cases? No current cure for chronic kidney disease is found. Treatments include anemia is treated first, require blood transfusion or erythropoietic stimulating agents or iron supplements. Then if there is phosphate imbalance, then reducing consumption of dairy products, red meat, egg and fish. If there is high blood pressure, take antihypertensive medicine to protect the kidney. If there is itching in the skin, antihistaminics like chlorpheniramine is given. If there is anti-sickness medications, because toxins build up in your body because the kidneys don't work properly, patients may feel sick or nauseating, then cyclizine or metoclopramide can help the sickness. So we are continuing the routine essential treatment. Number 6 treatment is NSAID. You have to avoid NSAID and aspirin and ibuprofen. Then in case of end-stage treatment, end-stage disease, what to do? It needs dialysis and needs kidney transplant to survive. Most doctors try to delay the need for dialysis or kidney transplant for as long as possible because they carry the risk of potential serious complications. Now, in kidney dialysis, there are 2 types of dialysis. First is hemodialysis, second is peritoneal dialysis. In hemodialysis, blood is pumped out of the patient's body and goes through a dialyzer, an artificial kidney, about 3 times a week. Each session lasts for at least 3 hours. Then peritoneal dialysis, the blood is filtered in the patient's own abdomen in the peritoneal cavity, which contains a vast network of tiny blood vessels. A catheter is implanted into the abdomen, into which a dialysis solution is infused and drained out for as long as necessary to remove waste and excess fluid. Then the kidney transplant in end stage of CKD, the kidney donor and recipient should have what? Same blood type, same cell surface proteins and same antibodies in order to minimize the risk of rejection of new kidney. So siblings or very close relatives are usually the best type of donors. If a living donor is not available, the search will begin for a cadaver donor, that is dead person. Then the diet for CKD patient, restricting the amount of protein in the diet, salt intake regulated to control hypertension, and potassium and phosphorus consumption need to be restricted. Then vitamin D added. Vitamin D is essential for healthy bones, like alpha calcidol and calcitol may be given. Then fluid retention occurs, so most patients ask to restrict their fluid intake. So now we have come to the point, a newer approach for treating CKD, newer therapeutics for treating CKD, therapeutic management of patients with CKD. The current scenario, Main step therapy for patient with CKD is number 1, control BP. Second, drugs that block the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system. For example, ACE inhibitors and ARB. New therapies for patients with diabetes and non-diabetic forms of CKD are needed. SGLT2 inhibitor demonstrate reduction in renal and CV endpoints. In patients with CVD and CKD, because the kidney is the primary target of SGLT2 inhibition, and action of SGLT2 inhibitor in the kidney elicits a multi-organ response. Now, kidney disease improving global outcome recommendations. Kidney disease improving global outcome guidelines on diabetic kidney diseases recommended SGLT2 inhibitors as first-line treatment. First-line treatment for HbA1c control. Next to metformin, it is used in patients with type 2 diabetes. Now, what is the mechanism of SGLT2 inhibitor? Mechanism is SGLT2 inhibitors reduce glomerular hyperfiltration by afferent arterial vasoconstriction and promote body weight loss. Both are highly desirable effects in patients with obesity-induced CKD, followed by progressive recovery and stabilization of renal function. Now, anti-hyperglycemic therapies in patients with diabetes and CKD. So, first you have to do lifestyle changes like physical activity, nutrition and weight loss. Then, in second line, then in the treatment part, first line therapy is metformin. But it is only used if GFR is more than 45 ml. If it is less than 45 ml per minute, then reduce the dose. And the metformin, if GFR is less than 30, it is contraindicated. If there is kidney failure, it is contraindicated. Then you can start in first line therapy SGLT2 inhibitor. But remember, only it can be used if GFR is more than 45 ml per minute. And if it is less than 45 ml per minute GFR, do not initiate, stop. And if there is kidney failure, it is contraindicated. Now, additional drug therapy is needed for glycemic control. If not controlled by these, if still A1C is more than 7%, then additional drug therapy is needed for glycemic control. For example, GLP-1 receptor agonist, it is the preferred thing. But remember that it is degraded by DPP-4 gliptins. Then you can use DPP-4 inhibitor, but remember there is a heart failure risk except by saxagliptin. You can use insulins, but there is risk of hypoglycemia with SGLT2 inhibitor. You can use sulfonylurea, but remember there is risk of hypoglycemia with SGLT2 inhibitor. And you can also use the glitazones, thiazolidines, and you can also use alpha glucosidase inhibitor, that is acarbose and miglitol. But here, when you use the metformin, you have to remember the precaution. What is the metformin precaution? The pathophysiology of lactic acidosis from metformin is likely due to inhibition of gluconeogenesis by blocking pyruvate carboxylase. The first step of gluconeogenesis, which converts pyruvate to oxaloacetate. Now blocking this enzyme leads to accumulation of lactic acid, and lactic acidosis associated with metformin occurs only due to metformin overdose or in association with other comorbidities such as the renal or hepatic insufficiency, or in acute infection like sepsis, or in heart failure, or in hypoxia. Then I would like to tell you regarding GLP-1 receptor agonist, what is the mechanism. Here GLP-1 receptor agonist mechanism is, it may exert beneficial effect on traditional risk factors for CKD. For example, through lowering glucose and blood pressure, decreasing insulin levels in hyperinsulinemia. This is decreasing insulin level in hyperinsulinemia and causing weight loss, and GLP-1 receptor agonist has been localized at various sites in the kidney. Now, when we use the additional drug therapy when needed, when the HbA1c is more than 7%, then these drugs are guided by patient's preference, comorbidities, and GFR and the cost of the pocket of the patient. Then these drugs includes patient with GFR less than 30 ml per minute and or treated with dialysis. Now again I repeat, mechanism of renoprotective effect of GLP-1 receptor agonist. GLP-1 receptor agonists have been shown to activate PKA and increase the production of cyclic adenosine monophosphate. As a consequence, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate oxidase and NF-kappa B activity are inhibited, resulting in, these are the cytotoxins, the NF-kB activity, they are inhibited, resulting in the attenuation of the oxidative stress and inflammation. These favorable effects prevent podocyte loss as well as meningeal and endothelial dysfunction. These are prevented, and GLP-1 receptor agonists inactivate NHE3 and promote atrial natriuretic peptide secretion, thereby inducing natriuresis. Furthermore, GLP-1 receptor agonists inhibit tubular injury and subsequent tubulointerstitial fibrosis is decreased. You can see in the figure, in kidney, inflammation decreased, natriuresis increases, and your this epithelial mesenchymal transition decreased, and tubular injury decreased, and renal fibrosis decreased, and there is decrease of the glomerulosclerosis, and there is decrease in podocyte loss, and there is decrease in meningeal dysfunction and endothelial dysfunction, hence decrease in nephrotic proteinuria, and also there is decrease oxidative stress. Now, kidney disease improving global outcome 2020 clinical practice guidelines for diabetes management in chronic kidney disease. Now, what is comprehensive care to reduce risk of CKD progression and CV diseases? First is ACE inhibitor or ARB should be used in patients with diabetes mellitus, hypertension, and albuminuria. Then dietary changes should be done, and then individualized patient HbA1c, or you can target it less than 6.5 to less than 8% for non-dialysis patients. This is for non-dialysis patients because in dialysis patients HbA1c is underestimated. Then in lifestyle intervention, you decrease protein intake 0.8 gram per kg per day, stop smoking, tobacco cessation, and do the physical activity, the moderate intensity walk 150 minutes per week, and decrease your sodium less than 5 gram per day. Now what is antihypertensive therapy in CKD? So if there is a diabetes, you have to use metformin provided GFR is more than 45 ml, and if it is less than 45, dose modification done, and if it is less than 30 ml per minute, then or the patient is on dialysis, metformin contraindicated. And you can also start SGLT2 inhibitor in diabetes and hypertension also. So here you have to use if the GFR is more than 45 ml per minute, or if the GFR is less than 45 ml, it discontinue it. And in dialysis, this is contraindicated. Now, long-acting GLP-1 receptor agonist, if glycemic targets not achieved, or despite use of metformin and SGLT2 inhibitor, or unable to use those medications, you can start GLP-1 receptor agonist. Additional drug therapy as needed for glycemic control given, guided by patient preference, comorbidities, renal GFR, and cost to the patients. Structured self-management educational program carried out as per local context, culture, and availability of resources. Then team-based integrated care focused on risk evaluation and patients improvement. What is the conclusion of all these? The new kidney disease improving global outcome guideline on diabetes mellitus management in CKD offers approaches for evidence-based care supplemented with practice points to inform clinical management and implementation. Now, the European Renal Association and the European Dialysis and Transplant Association recommends an SGLT2 inhibitor plus metformin patient with CKD and type 2 diabetes. Supposing patient with type 2 diabetes and CKD is there and who are not at A1C goal, means less than 7%, after first line treatment of the metformin, what to do? Patient with type 2 diabetes and CKD not at goal, means less than 7%, while recommended metformin dose or metformin is not tolerated or contraindicated, then start in second line, use SGLT2 inhibitor with evidence of cardio-renal protection. If A1C is still not at goal, means it is not less than 7%, or SGLT2 inhibitor is not tolerated or contraindicated, start GLP-1 receptor agonist with evidence of cardio-renal protection. If A1C is still not at goal, means less than 7%, or GLP-1 receptor agonist is not tolerated or contraindicated, use additional anti-diabetic agents like DPP-4 inhibitor, this your glycagens and sulfonylurea, basal insulin, and according to current recommendation for type 2 diabetes mellitus you have to use. Now reassess A1C in 3 months intervals and adjust the treatment of above goal. Now, comprehensive strategy care in patient with diabetes and CKD. Initiate ACE inhibitor or ARB at initial stage. Within 2 to 4 weeks after starting or changing dose, monitor serum creatinine and potassium. If you find normokalemia, if increase in creatinine less than 30%, then increase dose of ACE inhibitor or ARB, or continue on maximally tolerated dose. And if you see there is hyperkalemia, review concurrent drugs, use moderate potassium intake, use diuretics, use sodium bicarbonate, use GI cation exchangers. What are those? Patriomar, Sorbitex, calcium. It increases fecal potassium excretion by binding potassium in the lumen of the GI tract. Then after using this, if still hyperkalemia not controlled, then reduce dose or stop ACE inhibitor or ARB is the last resort. And if there is increase in creatinine more than 30%, then review for causes of AKI, acute kidney injury, correct volume depletion, reassess concomitant medications, for example diuretics and NSAID, and consider renal artery stenosis also, and then reduce dose or stop ACE inhibitor or ARB as the last resort. Now, multiple sites for the beneficial effects of SGLT2 inhibitors in the kidney. SGLT2 inhibitors causes decrease in sodium plus glucose reabsorption, decreased metabolic demand, increased sodium distal tubule reabsorption and reabsorb water, increased afferent arterial vasoconstriction and decreased hyperfiltration, decreased renal blood flow, decreased renal partial pressure of the oxygen, decreased oxidative stress, increased beta hydroxybutyrate mediated this erythropoiesis, increased beta hydroxybutyrate mediated erythropoiesis. So increased erythropoiesis causes what? It causes in bone erythrogenesis, increased iron utilization, increased oxygen delivery to the heart, then it increased circulating progenitor cells to help the heart, and it also helps the heart, erythropoiesis. Then it reduces inflammation and it increases brain neuroprotection, and by this in heart you will see increased oxygen delivery and decreased left ventricular hypertrophy. Now, what is the role of SGLT2 inhibitor in the management of patients with CKD? Renal angiotensin system blockade is an effective treatment for CKD. However, SGLT2 inhibitor therapy seems promising in patients with and without diabetes. DAPA CKD confirms efficacy and safety of SGLT2 inhibitors in patients without type 2 diabetes also. The implementation of SGLT2 inhibitor in clinical practice is important. The renin-angiotensin system or renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system is a hormone system that regulates blood pressure and fluids and electrolyte balance as well as systemic vascular resistance. Now you will see National Kidney Foundation classification of CKD. Here GFR is same which I have told you in the kidney stages. And regarding albuminuria category, urine creatinine clearance of albumin ratio, if it is category A1, then ACR will be less than 30. ACR means ratio of urine albumin creatinine. It is less than 30 means category A1. If category A2, ACR will be 30 to 300. If category A3, it will be more than 300. Remember, if ACR 30 to 300 milligram per gram, here it is like this, milligram per gram for more than 3 months indicates CKD and nephrotic syndrome. And remember, in nephrotic syndrome, urine albumin creatinine ratio may rise up to 2220 milligram per gram. And assess urine albumin excretion yearly. Assess urine albumin excretion yearly to diagnose and monitor kidney damage. Now we have come to the dapagliflozin in patient with chronic kidney disease, DAPA-CKD. In 2018, use is positive declared data in a broad patient population with type 2 diabetes. In 2019, groundbreaking, very new and big change results in heart failure patient with and without type 2 diabetes. In 2020, unprecedented, unexplained data in chronic kidney disease in patient with and without type 2 diabetes. First SGLT2 inhibitor to show positive data in a broad CKD population. Here in all these three you have to remember standard care used every time in 2018, 2019 and 2020. Now what is standard of care used? Number one, keep yourself active and fit. Control your blood sugar. Monitor blood pressure. Monitor weight and eat a healthy diet. Drink plenty of fluid. Don't smoke. Be aware of amount of over-the-counter medication pills what you are taking. Have your kidney function tested if you are at high risk. Now dapagliflozin wins in patients with CKD, uniting cardiologists and nephrologists. Regardless of diabetes status, patients with chronic kidney disease have better renal and cardiovascular outcome as well as lower chance of dying when dapagliflozin is added to standard of care therapies. Then the kidney outcomes associated with use of SGLT2 inhibitors in real world clinical practice, a multinational observational cohort study. During the mean follow-up of 14.9 months, initiation of SGLT2 inhibitor was associated with a 51% reduction in the risk of 50% GFR decline or end-stage kidney disease events compared with other glucose-lowering drugs. These data suggest that benefit of SGLT2 inhibitor on kidney function identified in clinical trials seems to be largely generalizable, involving many different things to clinical practice. Now DAPA-CKD, the beginning of a new era in renal protection. First game changer, first game changing drug of CKD in 2 decades after the introduction of ACE inhibitor and ARB. Cut the incidence of substantially worsened CKD by an average of 39% versus placebo when added to standard treatment with the NNT of 19 to prevent one primary outcome event after a median of 2.4 years. Now third point, dapagliflozin delayed initiation of dialysis and reduced the number of deaths. Fourth, dapagliflozin treatment also cut all-cause mortality by statistically significant relative 31%, and another secondary endpoint analysis showed a statistically significant 29% relative reduction in the rate of cardiovascular death or heart failure hospitalization. Then use SGLT2 inhibitor in routine practice, but high cost of SGLT2 inhibitor can be a barrier in implementing the treatment. Then diamond conclusion. SGLT2 inhibitor reduce the risk of dialysis, transplantation or renal death due to kidney disease. Benefits are unlikely mediated by improvement in glycemic control, suggesting that SGLT2 inhibitor may be beneficial in non-diabetic kidneys also. Trials showed a significant acute reversible reduction in GFR, indicating reduction in intraglomerular pressure. Now DAPA-CKD summary and conclusion. Patient with CVD with and without type 2 diabetes, dapagliflozin compared to placebo and found it reduced the risk of kidney failure. Second, reduced the risk of death from CV causes or hospitalization for heart failure. Then third point is prolonged survival. The benefit of dapagliflozin in CKD patients with or without type 2 diabetes were consistent in those with and without cardiovascular disease. The result of DAPA-CKD are consistent with those of DAPA heart failure. DAPA-CKD, dapagliflozin was well tolerated in keeping with its number one established safety profile, second with a similar picture to that observed in DAPA heart failure. Now in conclusion also, number one, regardless of the type of concomitant trial, outcome trial, regardless of the type of outcome trial in cardiovascular, kidney or heart failure, SGLT2 inhibitors have shown consistent benefit in number one, reducing the risk of kidney failure, second, reducing the risk of death from cardiovascular causes or hospitalization for the heart failure. Then the DAPA-CKD has shown renal, cardiovascular and mortality beneficial effect regardless of underlying cause of kidney disease and regardless of presence of type 2 diabetes. Then the third point, consistent with other SGLT2 inhibitors, dapagliflozin was well tolerated while eliciting an acceptable safety profile across different underlying causes of the kidney diseases. Now in the last but not the least, the conclusion, what to take home message. What to take home message. Diabetic kidney disease is a common complication with grim, cruel consequences. SGLT2 inhibitors show cardio and renal protective effects beyond their effect on glucose control. Third, as SGLT2 inhibition decreases apparent arterial tone by impact on tubuloglomerular feedback loop, that is output routed back as input, that is reduce glomerular hyperfiltration by apparent arterial vasoconstriction and promote body weight loss. Thank you. I thank you, my all colleague, for your kind attention in the CME and the CME on game changer in CKD, a therapeutic approach in the treatment of CKD. Of course, it was important, and I have evaluated very nicely, and I'm sure you would have understood the main points. So I again thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.